My older brother, Ryan, has always been the star of the family. He's the classic overachiever. Straight A's in school, a successful career as a doctor, and always the one our parents bragged about at family gatherings. Meanwhile, I've always been the more normal sibling. Steady job, no kids, no grand accolades, but I've been content with my life. Ryan met Sarah about a decade ago. She was incredible, smart, kind, and loving. She worked as a teacher and was fiercely dedicated to her students. They got married, had two beautiful kids, Mia 7 and Ethan 5, and for a while everything seemed perfect. Sarah and I quickly became close. Since I don't have kids of my own, Mia and Ethan filled a space in my heart I didn't even know was empty. Sarah would often joke that I was more like their second mom than their aunt because I was always around to help with babysitting or planning fun activities. She'd confide in me about how exhausting it was balancing Ryan's demanding career, the kids, and her own job. But she loved her family and worked hard to keep everything together. But while Sarah was pouring her heart into the family, Ryan had other plans. About a year and a half ago, Sarah called me in tears. She had just discovered that Ryan was having an affair with one of the nurses at his clinic, Claire. Claire is in her late 20s, single, and without sounding too judgmental, she's not exactly known for her professionalism or maturity. She's the type of person who posts thirst traps on Instagram and captions them with Bible quotes. At first, Ryan denied everything. He gaslit Sarah, saying she was imagining things and that her suspicions were just paranoia. But Sarah isn't stupid. She found messages on his phone, explicit ones, that left no doubt about what was going on. When she confronted him with the evidence, Ryan finally admitted it. But instead of apologizing or trying to fix things, he dropped another bombshell. He was in love with Claire and wanted a divorce. Sarah was devastated. She begged him to think about the kids, to try counseling, anything. But Ryan was already halfway out the door. Within weeks, he had moved in with Claire, leaving Sarah to deal with the fallout. The divorce was ugly. Ryan fought tooth and nail to minimize child support, claiming that his new family needed the money more. Sarah, being the strong woman she is, didn't let him walk all over her, but it was still an exhausting process. She ended up with primary custody of the kids, while Ryan got every other weekend and alternating holidays. During this time, my bond with Sarah and the kids only grew stronger. I helped Sarah navigate the legal mess, babysat Mia and Ethan whenever she needed a break, and made sure the kids knew they were loved despite everything going on. I can't tell you how many nights I spent comforting Mia when she asked why her dad didn't live with them anymore, or trying to explain to Ethan why Daddy didn't come to his soccer games. Meanwhile, Ryan and Claire's relationship blossomed. They got married about 6 months ago, and now Claire is pregnant. Ryan is over the moon about his fresh start, but his involvement with Mia and Ethan has been half-hearted at best. He'll show up for his scheduled weekends, but he doesn't go out of his way to be there for them. It breaks my heart because those kids adore him, even after everything. Claire has made it clear that she sees Sarah as a threat. She constantly refers to her as the ex in a dismissive tone, as if Sarah didn't spend years building a life with Ryan and raising his kids. Claire has also been trying to erase Sarah from the family picture. She's pushed Ryan to ask our parents to stop inviting Sarah to family events, and she's made it known that she doesn't want Mia or Ethan talking about their mom when they're at her house. To top it off, Claire thrives on drama. She's one of those people who can't let a single slight go without making it into a full-blown issue. If someone doesn't cater to her every whim, she cries about how she's being disrespected. And now that she's pregnant, she's using it as a weapon to demand even more attention and special treatment. This year, I decided to host Christmas at my house. It's the first time I've hosted, and I wanted it to be special, especially for Mia and Ethan, who deserve some holiday joy after such a rough year. Naturally, I invited Sarah. She and the kids are family to me, and there was no way I was leaving them out. When Ryan found out that Sarah was coming, he called me in a rage. He said it was inappropriate for me to invite his ex-wife to a family event now that he's remarried. Claire, who was apparently listening in on the call, chimed in to say that seeing Sarah would be too stressful for her and that it could harm her pregnancy. Ryan demanded that I disinvite Sarah, saying that Claire is his family now and that I need to respect that. He even had the audacity to suggest that Sarah isn't really family anymore and that it was weird for me to stay so close to her. I laughed. I told Ryan that if Claire's pregnancy was so delicate that seeing Sarah could harm her, they were welcome to stay home. But as far as I was concerned, Sarah and the kids were coming to Christmas, and that was non-negotiable. Ryan and Claire are now furious. They've been sending me passive-aggressive texts about how I'm disloyal and playing favorites. Ryan accused me of being stuck in the past and said I need to move on and accept Claire as part of the family. Claire has been milking the situation, telling anyone who will listen that I'm intentionally causing her stress and putting her baby at risk. My parents are trying to stay neutral, but I can tell they're leaning toward Ryan's side. They've suggested that I should uninvite Sarah just to keep the peace, but I refuse to do that. Sarah didn't do anything wrong. She's the one who was betrayed, lied to, and left to raise 2 kids on her own. I'm not going to reward Ryan and Claire's selfishness by excluding her. This isn't just about Christmas. It's about standing up for what's right. Sarah and the kids deserve to feel loved and included, especially after everything they've been through. If Ryan and Claire want to sulk at home, that's their choice, but I'm not going to let them dictate who I can invite into my home. So, Reddit. Am I the a-hole for refusing to disinvite my brother's ex-wife for Christmas? Should I be prioritizing my brother and his new family? Or am I right to stand by Sarah and the kids? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Wow, OP's brother and his new wife sound like a piece of work. Let me get this straight. He cheated on his wife, destroyed his family, and now expects everyone to just pretend Sarah doesn't exist because it makes Claire uncomfortable? That's ridiculous. Sarah is the mother of his children, and she will always be part of the family because of Mia and Ethan. Good on OP for standing her ground and prioritizing what's right over her brother's selfish demands. Claire's pregnancy doesn't give her a free pass to erase Sarah or dictate how OP hosts her holiday. If they can't handle it, they're free to stay home. OP is creating a loving and inclusive environment for the kids, and that's what really matters. And now let's hear the community's opinion. Everyone sucks here. Hear me out. Your brother is a massive a-hole for what he did to Sarah and the kids, and Claire sounds manipulative and immature. However, inviting both Sarah and Ryan with Claire to the same Christmas gathering was bound to create drama. You must have known this would be a powder keg waiting to explode. You're right to want to support Sarah and the kids, but hosting all of them together feels like stirring the pot. Maybe a compromise, like separate celebrations, or inviting Sarah and the kids to a different day would have been better. That way, you can still support Sarah without putting everyone in an awkward situation. Not the a-hole. Your brother is delusional if he thinks Sarah can just disappear because it makes Claire uncomfortable. The way Claire is acting, demanding that Sarah be excluded from family events, screams insecurity. Maybe she knows what kind of man she married and is afraid he'll cheat on her the same way he cheated on Sarah. And let's not ignore the kids in all of this. For Mia and Ethan, having their mom there is probably the most stabilizing thing about this Christmas. If Ryan and Claire cared about the kids' well-being, they'd suck it up and be civil. But no, they'd rather make it all about themselves. You're doing the right thing, OP. Don't let them push you into enabling their selfishness. Info. I'm leaning toward not the a-hole, but I have some questions. How does Sarah feel about being at the same event as Ryan and Claire? Is she okay with it? Or is she just going along with it because you invited her? If she's uncomfortable, it might be worth reconsidering to avoid putting her in a stressful situation. Also, how do Mia and Ethan feel about seeing their dad and Claire? Kids can be pretty perceptive, and if there's any tension, it might affect their holiday experience. At the end of the day, the kids' happiness should be the priority. If everyone can act like adults, great. But if it's going to turn into a battlefield, it might be better to rethink things. Edit. A few people have asked how Sarah feels about attending Christmas with Ryan and Claire, so I wanted to address that. I had a long conversation with Sarah before inviting her because I didn't want to put her in an uncomfortable or painful position. Sarah, being the incredible person she is, said she's willing to set aside her differences for the sake of the kids. She admitted that being in the same room as Claire isn't exactly her idea of a good time. After all, this is the woman who had an affair with her husband and is now trying to erase her from the picture. But Sarah is a strong and selfless person, and her priority is always Mia and Ethan. She said she wants the kids to have a magical Christmas surrounded by family, and if that means swallowing her pride and being cordial to keep the peace, she's willing to do it. I can't even begin to explain how much I admire Sarah's grace in all of this. While Ryan and Claire are making demands and throwing tantrums, Sarah is focusing on what's best for the kids. That's one of the many reasons why I refuse to uninvite her. She's not coming to cause drama. She's coming to create a sense of normalcy and love for her children. Update. Well, things have escalated. After I told my brother and Claire that I refused to uninvite Sarah from Christmas, they called me again, and this time, they flat out threatened me, saying that if I'm taking sides with Sarah, then I'll never meet their child once it's born. Ryan told me I needed to make a choice. Either I fully embrace his new family and cut ties with Sarah, or I'd be cut out of their lives entirely. Claire chimed in, saying it's disrespectful to support his ex-wife, and that they won't tolerate betrayal. So I made my choice. I told them that if they're going to weaponize their unborn child to manipulate me, that says more about them than it ever could about me. Sarah and the kids are family to me, real family, and I'm not turning my back on them just to appease Ryan and Claire's egos. If they want to cut me out of their child's life, that's on them. I won't let them push me into abandoning the people I love and care about. As far as I'm concerned, Mia and Ethan are already like my own niece and nephew, and they deserve an aunt who will stand up for them. It hurts, but I have no regrets about my decision. At the end of the day, I'd rather be true to myself and stand by people who actually value family than give in to toxic ultimatums. I guess time will tell if they follow through on their threats. But for now, I'm looking forward to making this Christmas as magical as possible for Sarah, Mia, and Ethan. They deserve it. Bit of backstory. Mom and Dad divorced when I was about 10 due to his addictions, and my mother and sister and I moved overseas shortly after. A few months later, we were introduced to Amber, female 38, my father's new girlfriend, and they got married a couple of years later. Amber was lovely, but like my father, she had some issues with addictions. As soon as they hit the bottle, they would constantly fight, and this caused a lot of problems for their working and family. Lately, due to my father's addiction, he got extremely ill and died in hospital a couple of weeks ago. My sister, Amber, and I were devastated. My sister and I couldn't even fly to see him off due to the virus restrictions. I received the will a few weeks ago. My mother was smart enough to get him to protect my sister and me after they divorced, which was a smart move because all of his assets, money, and houses, etc., have come to us. This is enough money to pay for my university in full, buy a nice house, pay off loans and debts, as well as now be the joint owner of 3 companies. The trouble started last week when I received a text from my uncle saying that Amber was pissed off that her husband didn't leave her anything. Granted, nobody expected him to die so suddenly. He was her whole world. She moved to his country where she had no job, minimal friends, and left her family completely behind to be with him. She couldn't even work due to the country's working laws. I had a call with my uncle later that night, and he warned me to gear up with a lawyer if necessary. By no means do I intend on leaving her with nothing, but at the same time, I don't think she's owed companies, properties, etc. that have been in my family for generations. My uncle and I made the decision that he, my sister, and I would give her $100K USD out of the company to go back to the UK, start afresh, and some further support if needed. She agreed, but then began hitting the bottle again. I hadn't heard from her over the next few days, but all of a sudden, bam, a legal notice saying she was going to try and get half of the will. I called my aunt, who happens to be a lawyer. She stated that looking at the laws of where he is, his last will is void. But luckily enough, it is void, because everything goes to the children regardless. To say she was pissed was an understatement. I got a call from my uncle that apparently she thinks my mother, who really has nothing to do with this, she's just protecting my sister and me, and the rest of my family are a-holes for cutting her out of the will. I know she loved and cherished that man beyond belief, but someone please tell me, am I the a-hole? Edit. At the time of writing his will, he was single, and from what I found, if you are single with children, the will usually will pass on to them when they become of age. Honestly, not the a-hole. If he loved her so much, why didn't he change the will? You were being generous by offering her that money, but also right to be worried she'll drink it all anyway. If she hadn't sent the legal notice after you offered, I'd have suggested putting the money into a trust, so she'd get an allowance. Not the a-hole. Far from it. You and your sister didn't have to offer her the money, but you both were very generous. I just hope she doesn't drink all this money away, and that she's able to move back home and actually do something with her life. Info. What would your father have wanted? If you feel pretty confident that your father would have wanted her to have something, and you don't arrange it, just because technically you don't have to, then yes, you're the a-hole. If you really don't know what he would have wanted, then going by the will is reasonable, and your offer was reasonable. We discussed with my father multiple times before his death about everything he wanted to do, and afterwards my uncle and her talk. We've had family discussions where he has explicitly said he wants all of his estates and things split evenly amongst his children and any further children he should have. That means that if he and Amber had a child, it would be split to them as well. My fiancé, 40, and I, 40 male, have been engaged for 11 years and together for 16. A year ago, she gave birth to our daughter. Don't get me wrong, I was excited to have a baby on the way, and I wanted to have kids. My parents were also happy about their first granddaughter. However, after giving birth, my fiancé turned into a neurotic mess of a person, and about 90% of that was due to her body. Her body seemed to have undergone a massive meltdown of sorts, and I certainly wasn't prepared for it. I was fat in middle school, so I have stretch marks, but my wife's pretty much encompassed her whole body. She also would repeat annoying phrases to friends like, "My stomach is squishy, but our daughter loves it because I'm mama," or "I'm perfect in her eyes." In the same breath, she complains that her skin looked like a melted candle, and it's honestly too much to bear for me. She says that she can't imagine trying on wedding gowns, and for the moment I'm just secretly relieved because she's impossible to deal with, and the last thing I want to do is plan a wedding. She's since started spamming everybody's Instagram feed with fitness journey videos. My sister and her college friends came home one weekend and were scrolling through her posts and saying the caption she writes is just desperate, but I've bit my tongue so far. But yesterday, she posted a close-up of her stretch marks with the really secondhand embarrassment-inducing captions to the aspect of, "I'm proud of my tiger stripes." It got a bunch of likes and comments, but honestly, I think people just thought it was the acceptable way to react. The pictures were also pretty close up. I confronted my fiancé and asked if she'd consider taking it down because it's just a set of really unattractive pictures. I honestly had to look away, and I'm sure our friends who follow her might have that gut reaction too. She started a long tirade about how strong her body was and how amazing it was, as if she was the only woman who's ever given birth. I finally stopped her and said it was an embarrassing post and walked away. Am I the a-hole? Now I caught her complaining about giving her best years to me and a bunch of other stuff over text to her friends. The last thing I want to do is plan a wedding. We figured that out when you said you've been engaged for 11 years. Yes, the a-hole. Let's say it's true that she's become a neurotic mess of a person since giving birth. So she's struggling with her mental health, and you're concerned about it only to the extent that you find it embarrassing. You're the a-hole 100%. This woman is showing you her insecurities and worries, and you are basically crapping all over them. Way to go, supportive partner. For what it's worth, my body massively failed me after my second child. So much so I was on a list for hip replacement surgery for 3 years, and towards the end was in excruciating pain constantly, but still had 2 children to care for. Intimacy went out the window. My weight crept up as I couldn't walk, let alone exercise. Do you know what my husband did? He was an absolute rock. He held me when it all got too much, told me it would get better, not once ragged me about my weight, and when I finally had the surgery, he looked after me and the kids for 6 weeks whilst I recovered. That's what a partner does. You should be ducking ashamed of yourself. Grow a pair and be a partner. She's given you a child and it's messed her body up. Make her feel like the queen she is, instead of her having to boost herself on Instagram as you aren't doing it for her. You're the a-hole. Your wife had a baby. Do you not get that bodies go through changes when you're carrying a kid? You're being incredibly unsupportive and gross. Your wife and your daughter deserve better. You can't imagine her trying wedding gowns? I can't imagine her marrying someone like you. Not the a-hole. As a very unattractive woman who has lost weight, I am sympathetic to her. I get it. The stretched marked loose skin is ugly and it sucks to live with. I feel her pain. But torturing yourself won't help. And the thing is, lying to yourself won't help either. I speak from experience when I say that neither of these are good options. She should not be posting pictures of her body or being proud of it. It's not beautiful, and good Lord, no one should be proud of bringing more children into this crap show world. Also, being proud that your uterus carried a baby is like being proud that your colon carried a bunch of poop. That's its ducking job. She will constantly be switching between 2 extremes of euphoric self-love and devastating self-hate. Neither of those things are healthy. She needs to extricate herself from this mindset completely and focus instead on body neutrality. If she can do that, she will genuinely start to feel better. I, 27 female, and my husband, 28 male, have been together for 10 years and finally got married last week. It was an amazing day as all my family were there and I got to marry my best friend. The day was going well and we were all sat in the dining hall where we had speeches. My dad's speech consisted of childhood memories of me, how much he appreciates my husband, and a few jokes thrown in now and then. It was the perfect speech. It made me and many others tear up. When the meal and speeches were all over, the guests were invited to party on the dance floor, and the doors were open to guests who wanted to wander outside as the venue was a farm. After saying my hellos to all my guests, I found one guest, a family friend, sitting in a dark corner outside bawling her eyes out with her fiancé comforting her. I of course asked her what was wrong, and she mentioned that my dad had said something insensitive in his speech, which I didn't pick up on. Her fiancé said it was the part when he said something along the lines of, "When am I going to have grandchildren?" or "I hope I get grandchildren." I was told that they have been trying to have children for years and been through IVF and had multiple miscarriages. I apologized to her and offered her a hug, but she refused and started screaming at me saying how she wants my dad to apologize instead of me. A few people had heard her, and I felt extremely embarrassed because I was being shouted at. My husband had also heard and came running to me. He eventually told her and her fiancé to leave, as she was causing a scene, and we just wanted to enjoy our wedding night. We offered to get them a taxi, and they left without saying goodbye when the taxi arrived. Here's where I think I'm the a-hole. The next day, I made sure the lady was okay, and also asked why she started screaming in my face. She replied and said that we were insensitive. We didn't consider checking my dad's speech. We were also not sympathetic at all to her when we were speaking to her, and told them to go home. I was shocked, and also a bit hurt because I did comfort her, but she refused it and started screaming at me. I explained to her that my dad's speech was from the heart, so I couldn't pre-check it, and if she had a problem with my dad, then she had a problem with me. I also said that she should have spoken to me about it in private, instead of causing a scene because we didn't want any drama at our wedding, and that she was wrong to scream in my face about it. She then called me an a-hole, and now I'm not invited to her wedding. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. Your dad said nothing wrong, and he doesn't have to check his speech with your wedding guests. This person behaved totally inappropriately. Yes, obviously shouting and disrupting the event is good reason to be asked to leave. You're not the a-hole. As tragic as their experience is, they should have just left the wedding if the speech, which clearly unintentionally, upset them that much. I feel like that woman wanted to create that scene for the attention, and to spite your happy moment. She wanted to make your day about her. I'm not saying she's definitely a narcissist or anything. Grief will make you act in messed up ways. Like, seriously, how are you supposed to pre-check a speech for something insensitive when they tell you why it would be insensitive to them after it was said? Not the a-hole. She was not your sister-in-law, so the mention of grandchildren, while it might have forced her to remember something unpleasant, was not about her. It was about you. It sounds like she should not have been out yet in public. She needed more time to deal with her loss, especially a wedding. Chances are very high usually that the subject of children is going to come up. Even if you did pre-check that speech, chances are you would be thinking about you since it was your day. I, female 25, have been engaged to my fiancé, male 30, for 5 months now. Ever since I moved in with him, I've been having an issue about him making a mess around the place and not cleaning up afterwards. For example, he'd come home from work, sits on the couch and throws his dirty socks on the coffee table. He'd eat his sandwich while moving around, spreading bread on the floor. He'd make a mess whenever he goes into the kitchen to cook something. I ended up handling everything in the kitchen. He'd constantly lose my stuff, and I'd just give him simple tasks so he won't screw up. 2 days ago, he said he was having his friends over for lunch. He said that those were formal friends that he has a professional relationship with at work, and asked if I could clean up the living room before they show up. Thing is, I had work to do. I told him that I'd do my best to try to get off work 2 hours earlier to clean up, since he'll be bringing them with him from work. Unfortunately, I couldn't leave work early as there were a number of co-workers who didn't show up, so I had to cover more hours and I ended up getting off work at 7. I tried to call him several times, even left him a text, but I got no response. I got home at 7 p.m. I found him playing video games. He gave me an angry stare and said that he brought his friends over and was embarrassed by the mess that I didn't clean up because I thought work was more important than him, and that he had to take them to the restaurant after barely sitting in the filthy living room for 30 minutes, and said that his friends were uncomfortable, and he felt embarrassed. I explained that I had to work, and that he shouldn't have made a mess, then expect me to clean it up, then get angry that I didn't. He argued with me that he counted on me, and I let him down and embarrassed him, and that now they'll badmouth him and talk behind his back about how filthy his place was. I yelled at him to stop blaming me, and told him that it wasn't my fault my coworkers put more work hours on my timeline. He said that apparently I'm being taken advantage of at work, and that I'm happy and okay with it. He said he wanted to stay at a friend's house because the place was filthy, and he couldn't stand it. I try to call him to discuss this, but he keeps his line busy and sends me texts saying he's busy. I should mention that whenever I talk to him about doing cleaning himself, he'd say he doesn't know how and that cleaning isn't his thing. Is he your fiancé or your child? Not the a-hole. I just do not understand how he's angry at you for not cleaning the mess he made. Not the a-hole. He can't clean, then he can pay for a cleaner. Don't take on being housemaid, as you'll be it for the rest of your life, including for any pets or kids you have. No one else will help you when they see your own partner refusing to do so. He thinks work is taking advantage? Well, at home, he is taking advantage. I know everyone is dumping on OP's fiancé about not cleaning, but what is most horrifying to me is the emotional blackmail. 1. He waited at home for you to arrive from work, just to tell you off for not cleaning up the mess. 2. He has the nerve to suggest it's work that's taking advantage of you. 3. He didn't leave because he couldn't handle a filthy apartment. It has presumably been filthy for 2 days, and he has no issue playing video games in the living room until you arrive home. He left because you were finally sticking up for yourself. Therefore, he wanted to manipulate you into believing that you were somehow wrong or at fault, so he can continue to treat you poorly. 4. He is doubling down on his manipulation by ignoring you every time you reach out, in hopes that you become more desperate to make up. Obviously not the a-hole. If this type of behavior is typical in your relationship, I suggest couples counseling before you finalize any wedding plans. I'm 30 years old, and my sister Lily is 25. We grew up in a single-parent household. Our mom worked tirelessly to provide for us, taking on multiple jobs to keep food on the table and a roof over our heads. Despite her efforts, money was always tight, and we learned early on that nothing in life came easily. I've always admired my mom for her strength and dedication, and her sacrifices taught me the value of hard work. As the older sibling, I felt a sense of responsibility to help lighten her load. When I was a teenager, I took on part-time jobs to cover my own expenses and contribute to household bills. It wasn't always easy balancing school and work, but I was proud to do my part. Lily, on the other hand, had a very different experience. She was the baby of the family, naturally charming and academically gifted. She excelled in school and had big dreams of becoming a psychologist. Our mom often said Lily was destined for great things, and I wholeheartedly believed it. I wanted to support her in any way I could, even if it meant making sacrifices of my own. After high school, I went to community college while working part-time jobs to pay for tuition and living expenses. Eventually, I earned a degree in IT and landed a stable full-time job. It wasn't glamorous, but it provided financial stability and gave me the tools to build a secure future. Lily, meanwhile, was accepted into a prestigious university to study psychology. She was ecstatic, but the cost of attending was daunting. While she received scholarships and financial aid, they didn't cover everything. Tuition, books, and living expenses were significant, and our mom couldn't afford to contribute much. Seeing how much this opportunity meant to her, I stepped in. I told Lily I would help cover her education and living expenses so she could focus on her studies without the stress of financial insecurity. To make this work, I took on a second job, working evenings and weekends at a grocery store, in addition to my full-time IT position. It was exhausting, but I believed in Lily's potential and wanted her to succeed. For the next 4 years, I paid her rent, covered shortfalls in tuition, and sent her money for groceries and other necessities. I worked myself to the bone, sacrificing my own social life and personal goals to ensure she had what she needed. In total, I spent tens of thousands of dollars on her education. Lily graduated last year with her degree in psychology. I attended her graduation ceremony, and it was one of the proudest moments of my life. She thanked me for everything I'd done for her, and I felt like all my sacrifices had been worth it. After graduation, Lily landed a job at a mental health clinic. It wasn't a high-paying position, but it was a great start in her field. I continued paying her rent for the first year after graduation because she said she needed time to get on her feet. However, as the months went by, I started noticing that Lily's spending habits didn't align with her modest income. She moved into a luxury apartment, started buying designer clothes, and frequently posted pictures of fancy dinners, weekend getaways, and expensive gadgets on social media. While I was happy to see her enjoying life, I couldn't help but feel uneasy. It seemed like she was prioritizing luxury over financial stability. I considered having a conversation with her about budgeting and saving, but I hesitated because I didn't want to come across as controlling or judgmental. A few weeks ago, we had a family dinner at our mom's house. It was meant to be a casual gathering to catch up with everyone. During the meal, the conversation turned to careers and work-life balance. Someone asked me about my jobs, and I mentioned that I was still working 2 jobs, my full-time IT position and my part-time grocery store gig. Lily, who had been talking about her recent shopping spree, smirked and said, "Wow, 2 jobs. That's so sad. You're such a loser for working so much. A successful person shouldn't have to work multiple jobs to make ends meet. You're just not business-minded at all, which is sad." The room went silent. Everyone stared at me, waiting for my reaction. I was stunned. After everything I'd done for her, sacrificing my time, energy, and money, she had the audacity to insult me in front of our family. I managed to stay calm and replied, "Well, one of those jobs helped pay for your education, so maybe don't bite the hand that feeds you." Instead of apologizing, Lily rolled her eyes and muttered, "You're just obsessed with being a martyr." Her dismissive attitude was the final straw for me. I didn't say anything else during the dinner, but I couldn't stop replaying her words in my head. The next day, I called Lily to tell her I was done paying her rent. I explained that her behavior at the dinner was hurtful and disrespectful, and I felt like she didn't appreciate everything I'd done for her. I told her it was time for her to take full responsibility for her own life and finances. Lily was shocked. She immediately tried to backpedal, saying she didn't mean what she said and that she was just joking. She said she thought I needed a kick in the butt because I can do so much better and earn so much more money with my skills. She begged me to reconsider, claiming she couldn't afford her apartment without my help. I stood my ground and told her my decision was final. I reminded her that she had a degree, a job, and the tools to build a successful life for herself. It was time for her to budget responsibly and live within her means. Without my financial support, Lily had to break her lease and move into a smaller, less expensive apartment. She's also had to cut back on her extravagant spending, which she's been complaining about nonstop on social media. She's posted vague, passive-aggressive messages like, "It's funny how people who claim to support you are the first to abandon you," and "Some people just love to tear you down." She's also told our extended family that I cut her off over a harmless joke and left her struggling to make ends meet. Our mom is caught in the middle. She understands why I'm upset, but wishes I had given Lily a second chance. She worries that this rift will permanently damage our sibling relationship. Meanwhile, Lily has been giving me the silent treatment, and the tension in our family has been unbearable. I'm struggling to reconcile my love for Lily with the hurt and betrayal I feel. For years, I worked myself to the bone to support her dreams. I sacrificed my own comfort, social life, and financial stability because I believed in her potential and wanted her to succeed. For her to turn around and call me a loser in front of our family felt like a slap in the face. It wasn't just the insult, it was the complete lack of gratitude and respect for everything I'd done for her. I don't regret pulling the plug on her rent payments. I believe it's time for her to stand on her own 2 feet and learn how to manage her finances responsibly. But I do wonder if I could have handled the situation differently. Maybe I should have given her a warning or talked to her privately instead of cutting her off so abruptly. Part of me feels guilty for how harshly I responded, but another part of me feels like she needed a wake-up call. Reddit. Am I the a-hole for stopping my sister's rent payments after she insulted me at a family dinner? Lily calling OP a loser after all the sacrifices he made for her is not only disrespectful, but outright cruel. OP worked tirelessly, juggling 2 jobs, to give her a life and education that she wouldn't have had otherwise. The fact that she's now living in a luxury apartment and indulging in an extravagant lifestyle is entirely because of OP's efforts. For her to turn around and insult OP, the very person who enabled her success, is beyond ungrateful. Cutting off rent payments was the right move. It's clear she's lost sight of the value of hard work and needs a wake-up call. If she wants to maintain her current lifestyle, it's time she learns how to fund it herself. And now let's hear the community's opinion. Not the a-hole. The entitlement Lily displayed is honestly shocking. You worked 2 jobs, sacrificed your own time and energy, and gave up so much to ensure she could achieve her dreams. Instead of being grateful, she ridiculed you in front of your family. That's not just rude, it's a betrayal of everything you did for her. It's especially galling that she seems to equate her flashy lifestyle with success, while looking down on the hard work that actually created that foundation for her. People like Lily need to understand that nothing comes for free, and it's time for her to take responsibility for her own life. Cutting her off wasn't just justified, it was necessary. Not the a-hole. I can understand how hard this decision must have been for you, especially given how much you care for your sister and the sacrifices you've made over the years. But the way Lily spoke to you at that dinner was completely unacceptable. It wasn't just a joke. It was a reflection of her lack of gratitude and understanding of everything you've done for her. By cutting her off, you're not being cruel. You're giving her an opportunity to learn about responsibility and how to stand on her own 2 feet. It might feel harsh right now, but it's likely the best thing for her in the long run. She has a degree and a job. She's more than capable of figuring this out without relying on you. Not the a-hole. What you did for Lily, working 2 jobs to fund her education and support her lifestyle, was extraordinary. That's not something many siblings would do, and it shows how deeply you care about her. For her to turn around and mock you, calling you a loser after everything you sacrificed, is absolutely unacceptable. Her behavior at that dinner wasn't just a casual insult. It was a display of complete disregard for your efforts. Cutting off her rent payments was the right decision. She's an adult now, and it's time for her to take responsibility for her own life. Don't let her guilt trip you into thinking you're the bad guy here. You've already gone above and beyond for her. She'll learn to appreciate you eventually, even if it takes time.
My, 28 male. Grandparents only have 2 grandchildren, me and my sister, 24. My dad has a sister who never had kids or married, and a brother who just got married for the first time at 54. With his new marriage, he gained 3 stepsons, 25, 21, and 19. All 3 are not thrilled with my uncle's marriage to their mother, and have had very little to do with my uncle since the wedding, even less to do with the rest of our family. I've never even met them. My grandparents have moved in with my aunt because they're getting older and they recently sold their house. Though I did not know until recently, my grandparents' plan was always, when they died or were ready to relocate, to sell their house and split the money between me and my sister, their only grandchildren. They recently did so, and the house sold for nearly $300,000, giving both me and my sister a sizable amount of money. This is great because my sister can pay off her college entirely, and I am able to pay for my upcoming wedding and honeymoon, as well as a down payment on a new house. We should even have enough to stock a little away for the future. Needless to say, we were thrilled and immensely grateful. A few days ago, I got a call from my uncle's wife. She claims that her sons are a little hurt that they were not getting a share of the money, since they are now grandchildren as well. I thought this was kind of dumb, since I know for a fact that 2 of them have never even met my grandparents, and I'm really not sure about the 3rd. But now they want to be considered grandchildren because they get money. They've never tried to be a part of the family before. I asked my grandparents, and they said it's our money for my sister and I to share with them if we'd like, but basically, there's a reason they were left out. Obviously, even this large an amount of money is less when split 5 ways instead of 2, and we both really already had plans for the money, so we're leaning towards saying no. Am I the a-hole? So not the a-hole. I can't even imagine being the new aunt and calling you. What nerve! You and your sister should move forward with your plans and not think about this phone call. Not the a-hole. They're not blood. They've made no effort to form a relationship, and it's your grandparents' money. Therefore, if splitting it between you and your sister is what they want to do, then that's their decision. I'd respond by asking what their names are. Power move. Not the a-hole. Being a family is neither a bloodline nor marriage certificates. It's a privilege, and it needs to be earned. They clearly haven't done so. Basically, 3 strangers want your grandparents' money because someone they know has signed a paper. Do not give them anything. Me, male 31, and my girlfriend, female 24, have a great relationship. She has a son, male 6, from a previous relationship. We have been together for 5 years and lived together for 4. Her son lives with us full-time. I have a great relationship with her son, and I do all the fatherly activities and support him as if he was my own, as his bio father, male 33, is a deadbeat. Bio father does not pay support and will probably never contribute financially towards his son. 3 years ago, I told my girlfriend that she should start saving some money for her son's future. She does not make a lot of money, so I told her she can take some money from our checking account. I pay 80%, she 20% into this account each month, and set this aside for his future. And hopefully when he is older, he will have $30,000 to $50,000 USD to give him a good start in life as an adult. She never did this, even though I told her many times to do so. Now, girlfriend is pregnant, and I plan to set up accounts for both her child and the one we will be having together, and put aside an equal amount of money each month that they will be given when they are ready to start their adult lives. Girlfriend thinks this was a great idea, and said we would have to compensate her son for the 6 years of savings that he did not get previous to her getting pregnant with our mutual child. I said no. She had years to start saving money for him and chose not to do so. I will not be making a larger contribution to any of the kids, even if that means my bio child will have more savings when becoming an adult. Am I the a-hole for standing firm on this, as she had years to save money from our mutual account, but chose not to do so? Info. We live in a country with pretty much free everything. This is important because people don't save for their kids at all. Anything we save for the kids would be used for a down payment for a first home, or something else expensive young adults want, but don't need, like an arts degree abroad. Not the a-hole. You're setting up accounts for both children where the same amount of money will be deposited. That's fair and not favoring one child over the other, which is admirable. You also gave her the option to do it for her son out of your joint bank account, and she chose not to. That's on her. Not the a-hole. When I read the title, I thought, well, that's crappy. Contribute to both children equally. You accepted stepchild as your own, so they should get equal treatment. But that's the thing. You are giving them equal treatment. You have been telling her to take some of your shared money and start saving for the stepson for years now, and she hasn't done it. Now that there's a second child on the way, you have taken it upon yourself to do what she has been procrastinating to do. Could you have done those years ago when you told her to and saw that she wasn't going to? Probably. But you didn't, and you didn't have to. Now you are doing the same thing for both of the kids. You are giving both the kids equal treatment. I have 3 kids, my stepson Sammy, and my 2 daughters who came after him, Claire and Joe. Sammy was always a wild child and got himself into a lot of trouble at school. He fell into a lot of destructive behaviors and ended up in prison for some years for aggravated theft. He had a lot of the usual problems associated with that lifestyle, until he met my daughter-in-law. My daughter-in-law is the sweetest girl in the world, and I love her like I love the rest of my children. She saved my son and gave him a new lease on life. He is a family man who works a humble and hard-working job. His joy is his wife and his healthy hobbies now, and they recently told me they're trying for a baby, which just makes my heart soar. He is as healthy and good-hearted as any man can be now, and I'm so proud of them both. My daughters, on the other hand, have always been successful, book-smart, and I believe as kids we unconsciously favored them because of that in some ways. I certainly don't think we ever intended to, and we've apologized to Sammy in his adulthood. But overall, the girls got a lot more than Sammy did. That's not to say he wasn't loved and adored, but in adulthood, I now realize I should have supported my son more than I did. They are also financially very successful off their own backs, where Sammy and his wife aren't. Now, my late grandmother left my own late mother a ring that was valued in the thousands of dollars. Obviously, that's a huge amount, and I've been talking candidly about giving it away to one of my kids while I'm alive, to see them enjoy and wear it. My daughters lately have been bickering over and over as to whose collection it's going to go into, where my daughter-in-law, who was present, stayed silent because she assumed she wasn't part of my thoughts. Her humbleness and sweetness inspires me, and has for a very long time. So I decided I wanted her to have it. I made my daughters aware of the decision, and they both said it was fine. And I have not seen my daughter-in-law take off the ring once, and the amount of pleasure my son received from me honoring his wife that way made me feel it was all worth it. He actually thanked me over and over, Not to mention the huge shock on my daughter-in-law's face when I told her I wanted her to have it. However, my daughters have now been leaving snippy remarks that I should have just given the ring to one of them, and that I'm rewarding Sammy's bad behavior after all, because his wife got something for reining him in. Am I the a-hole here? Not the a-hole. It's your ring, and you can give it to whomever you want, and it sounds like this girl is deserving of this over your daughters. I had the same thing happen to me. My grandparents, who I've always been really close with, gifted me their wedding rings when I got engaged, and my sister, who was already married, got annoyed with me. I felt terrible, which sucked because it was supposed to be a happy time. Don't let your daughters ruin this and give the ring to your daughter-in-law. It's an extremely kind thing to do. No judgment, but if I'm being brutally honest, it kinda sounds like you're fantasizing about your daughter-in-law being the child you were never capable of raising due to your own parenting mistakes. She also gives her son no credit whatsoever for his comeback, instead saying it was all her daughter-in-law. Not to mention, she admits to favoring her other daughters when they were growing up. I'm pretty sure she is doing it to help her conscience, knowing she is probably a huge part of why her son turned out poorly. She is using her daughter-in-law as a makeup for her poor parenting. Frankly, OP sounds like she isn't owning up to that very much. What a slap in the face to have your parent who favored your siblings apologize for that, and then say the only reason you recovered is because of your partner. Yes, the a-hole. Everyone will probably say not the a-hole, because your property, do with it what you want. But I'm assuming both your daughters knew and cared about your mother. It makes sense that they would have an emotional attachment to a familial ring, and you just gave it away to someone who didn't even know either your grandmother or mother. To her, it's just a pretty ring. Also, your grandmother gave it to her daughter, who gave it to her daughter, so it's been passed down to the daughter. I know you love her as much as your own kid, but she is not your biological daughter who you raised. You put your son's wife's feelings over your own biological kids. I'd be pretty upset if my mother showed that she saw her daughter-in-law as more of a daughter than me. You even say in a comment that you knew you'd enjoy seeing the daughter-in-law wear it more. That's clear favoritism. I get that you think this woman is a saint for saving your wild child, but you're hurting your relationship with your own daughters and their relationship with their sister-in-law. I, 53 female, have a bio son Josh, 28, and a stepson Tom, 25. I married my current husband Steve 13 years ago. My deceased husband left Josh and I well provided for. After his death, I placed the house under both mine and Josh's name. Steve and I keep our finances separate. Josh graduated from med school at the top of his class and just finished up his residency. He married his girlfriend Leah after graduating med school. Leah was left some money and a house by her great aunt. They started doing cosmetic upgrades on the house, but then found out about the electrical and plumbing issues. Leah learned she was pregnant about this time. Josh was working 12-hour shifts at the hospital. His shift ended at midnight. He was worried about Leah being alone in a construction site. My home has a self-contained in-law suite. I offered them the suite and finally told him that he owns half the house when he offered to pay rent. Josh insisted upon paying the property taxes and insurance. Tom stated that he wanted the suite after I told him and my husband that Josh and Leah were moving in. Tom has never paid any rent, despite having a decent-paying job. I thought my son's need was greater. Leah adjusted her hours to align with Josh's. She works remotely. She always prepares a nice light meal for herself and Josh after finishing work. She is an excellent cook. I am not. Last Friday was the last day of Josh's residency as well as the last day of work for Leah. She planned to use PTO until she gave birth. Tom has a new girlfriend, Bets. I don't care for her much. She encourages him to drink. Tom is not an alcoholic, but he can be a mean drunk. An incident occurred about 2 years ago, and I told him he would have to move out should it ever happen again. Typically, they go back to her place after tying one on. But last Friday, they came to our house and followed the delicious smells emanating from the suite. They burst in on Leah and demanded food. As she opened the fridge, Tom pushed her aside and began taking out the food she had prepared. Beth started opening the basket of baby presents that her coworkers had sent. Leah kept asking them to stop. Tom tossed the cake she had made on the floor when he found out it contained cherries. Josh arrived right in the middle of this. There was a huge fight, which only stopped when Leah's water broke. He rushed her to the hospital, and 5 hours later, I had a beautiful baby granddaughter. Once Tom dragged himself out of bed the next morning, I told him that I expected him out in 30 days. He started shouting at me, saying that he should have been given the suite in the first place and not my precious son. He stormed out and we have not heard from him since. My husband is very upset with me for kicking him out, citing my favoritism towards my son, i.e., giving them the suite, as the reason for this outburst. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. This particular event doesn't sound like favoritism. It sounds like you reacting to an escalated situation you have no desire to revisit. OP has been more than generous towards stepson for far too long. Even if John wasn't a part owner, it's clear he would be staying in the suite temporarily. If stepson had that kind of space, he would never move out. OP, you are not the a-hole. If your husband can't get on board, it's time to evaluate if this marriage is worth the headache of dealing with the mean drunk for the rest of your days. Oh, hell no, not the a-hole. Tom and Bets are damn lucky that Leia didn't press charges for assault. He needs to grow up, and your husband needs to grow up and stop enabling him. In my opinion, husband needs to leave with Tom. Not the a-hole. Does your husband know that Josh is actually half owner of the house that he and his son have been living in? Josh should install a lock in the in-law suite to keep out unwanted guests. I wouldn't even give Tom 30 days to find a new place. He hasn't been paying rent, so he has no tenants' rights. I would get security cameras installed as well if you have any concern about Tom returning in order to do anyone or anything harm. And if your husband doesn't like it, tell him he's welcome to join Tom wherever he ends up living. So, I have a stepson, 26 male, with my husband of 7 years. After college, he moved to New York City to work in marketing. He has lived in an apartment with two of his partners paying around $1.2K a month, but starting in June, July, they have stopped paying all rent. They thought they could get away with it because of the eviction moratorium during the virus, even though he was still earning an income, and one of his partners, lawyer, was a high earner who could have easily afforded the rent each month. Nonetheless, he told us that they weren't paying rent because he was convinced the government would cancel rent before the end of the year. Unsurprisingly, their landlord has been going nuts and is now threatening to sue them for back rent and evict them starting next year. It's not looking like any rent will be canceled, and stepson's high-earning partner also left them suddenly and is now unreachable. So now he is freaking out and wants us to cover the amount they owe on rent, about $6K. I am fuming. They claim they've spent the money already and have nothing in savings. He's coming to us begging for money because he says he'll be evicted and homeless in the middle of winter otherwise. My husband has a soft spot and wants to loan this money knowing we'll never get it back realistically. I'm less lenient and have been pushing back. However, stepson has gotten the sense that I'm the resistant one and has blown up at his dad, accusing him of putting his spouse over his children. I am stuck in the middle and am wondering if it's easier just to give in than to keep fighting. Husband and I are both high earners and can't afford this rent bailout, but I honestly am just sick of endorsing stepson's wasteful life decisions. Am I the a-hole for not wanting to pay for stepson's back rent, thus letting him get evicted and possibly sued starting next year? Not the a-hole. What a crappy, selfish group of individuals. Good for you for holding your ground on this. They deserve every second of stress this causes. Exactly. The three wise guys thought they would take advantage of the rent moratorium that was created for those folks who had lost their job or experienced reduced hours and/or wages, not for entitled brats who had the money to pay their rent but decided they wanted a free ride. I would not give him the money, as this might be a great lesson to learn for him. Maybe it might teach him to be thankful of what he has and not what he doesn't. I remember an old saying of my mama's. I cried because I had no shoes, until I saw a man with no feet. No, not the a-hole. He had the money for the rent, and he decided to just not pay. What the hell did he imagine would happen? The consequences of not paying rent are not having a home. Bailing him out won't help. It's not like he got into trouble because he couldn't afford it, lost his job, had a big emergency thing to pay for, like hospital bills. He just decided not to pay. He's an a-hole.